Let's get to the big news, shall we, that really woke us up today, and that is that ex-Chelsea boss Mauricio Pochetino has reportedly agreed to become the U.S. men's national team head coach. Now, his stint with Chelsea ended earlier this year in May after they finished 6th place in the Premier League, and this would actually be his first stint as a national team manager. So interesting, sort of turbulent campaign and season he had at Chelsea. After just 1 year, they did decide to part ways, but he's heading into some national team experience now. And let's have a look at some of the foreign coaches and the USA's, I suppose, performances under foreign coaches. It's just been to that dreaded round of 16. So at World Cups, can Mauricio Pochettino at least take them one step further? That's what we're going to find out. But first, let's bring in Jeff Carlisle, because Jeff, we want to know if the USA really has their man. But first of all, tell us a bit more details. How on earth did this happen?
Well, I mean, from the very beginning, Matt Crocker, the USSF sporting director, said that he was going to go after a big name, that the USSF was prepared to invest. And, he was going to take some big swings. And he did that. I mean, it was Jurgen Klopp to start. That was always a long shot, given that the Klopp, just went on a break, having resigned from Liverpool. But I would say Matt Crocker kept at it. It was kind of a steady drip, trying to see if they could get their guy. And ultimately they were able to do that. And, I think there are an awful lot of things that appeal to Mauricio Pochettino in terms of this job. I mean, it is a talented squad. It's a position in which he's going to be allowed to do his work. We're not going to have a situation like at Chelsea or at PSG where, it was a circus. I mean, he had constant pressure from above, constant challenging of what he was doing. I think in this situation, Matt Crocker, who knows Pochettino from their days at Southampton, is really going to allow Pochettino to do his work, to really get his teeth sunk into this, make the decisions that he feels are necessary without constantly looking over his shoulder. So, it's not done yet. That was kind of the word that was coming out there yesterday. There's still some issues between Chelsea and Pochettino in terms of his final compensation. It was mutual, termination or mutual agreement, but there's still some negotiations to go on in terms of, what the final outlay in terms of money from Chelsea to Pochettino is going to be. But I think everything is heading in a positive direction. I don't see any reason why this deal can't get done. My ESPN colleague Mark Ogden thinks it's going to be done in 24 to 48 hours. The more I think about it, the more I think it might take a little bit longer than that. But I think it's all systems go, and I think this is definitely trending in a positive direction.
I'm going to be honest with you guys. I am blown away that this is an actual conversation. I mean, the ambition here by U.S. Soccer, it's one thing to talk about it. It's one thing to hear reports surface. And, Jeff, Alexis, we know how this game is played. Oftentimes it's misdirection. Oftentimes it's optics. And this is why we hear Patrick Vieira. We've heard Thierry Henry. We've heard Pellegrino Matarazzo. We even heard Luis de la Fuente, the Spanish national team coach, right before on the eve of the Euros final, his camp is reaching out to U.S. Soccer, talking about their interests. So we know how this game is played. But to be actually here at the table, a seat at the table, to get a coach like Mauricio Pochettino, a coach of that stature, because tomorrow if United sack Erik ten Hag, you damn well bet there's a phone being picked up and Pochettino's one of those guys on that list. And for the longest of years, he's been on this cusp of some of the biggest teams in the world. So to be at this table right now blows me away. And the fact that this was so tight-lipped, Jeff, you've been at this a long time. I've been at this now for going on 8 years. I can't believe how this broke. Random Twitter accounts breaking this, faceless Twitter accounts, and mainstream media, here we are, like, what's going on? It was so tight-lipped. And to be here right now, it really is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's a statement of intent from the U.S. Soccer Federation. And not a moment too soon, really, when you think about it, because this is the country that's going to be co-hosting the World Cup with Canada and Mexico in less than 2 years' time. So, I think after the performance or the poor performance at the Copa America this summer, I think the USSF was very concerned that this opportunity of hosting the World Cup in 2026 was about to be squandered, because this was a team that was not improving, that did not look like it had pushed on at all from the 2022 World Cup. You had players in difficult club situations, not improving their stock. You were dealing with injuries to the likes of Tyler Adams. So I think there was real concern, and that was why the decision was ultimately made to pull the plug on Greg Berhalter's tenure as manager. But again, this is a huge swing. I mean, and credit to Matt Crocker. I mean, he I wouldn't say he made promises, but he made a lot of statements to the effect that this is what we're going to do in terms of a managerial search. And he's delivered on just about every single one of them, whether it was hiring a big name, investing in a coach. I mean, we don't have the particulars yet, but you can bet that Mauricio Pochetino is commanding a very high salary. And just everything about it that Matt Crocker said he was going to do, he's done. And you follow that on with what he did on the women's side with hiring Emma Hayes. So that's two really impressive hires in a row. And this is a guy that when Berhalter was fired, I mean, I was hearing from parts of the U.S. Soccer board that, not only should Berhalter have been fired, but Matt Crocker should have been fired. But now that he's pulled this off, I would say that his position is very secure. And now he gets to step back and see, what Pochettino can do as a manager. I mean, I will say the onus is now on the players. I mean, one aspect of the Berhalter era that it bugged me a little bit was anytime something went wrong, it was always Berhalter's fault. It was, the players seem to get a bit of a free pass. I think those days are over. They've got a big time manager, one that certainly has the clubs in his bag to help the team grow. And now it's really up to the players to make the most of this situation.
Jeff, just one quick point on the deal, because as you said, when Greg Berhalter was sacked, we understood that it was going to be an extra difficult process for U.S. Soccer because of the Emma Hayes appointment as well, and the unique situation that both are in. And to even lure someone like Jurgen Klopp, we knew it was going to come at a pretty penny. But to even lure someone like Mauricio Pochettino would be a pretty penny as well. So how many dollar signs are we talking, do you think? And how it probably would affect the Emma Hayes situation as well?
Well, I've heard that there are no policies, on the board. There are no bylaws that require Emma Hayes to be paid exactly the same as the men's coach, whoever that is. So I don't know that there's a situation where, Emma Hayes is all of a sudden going to get a massive raise, but it would not surprise me if the salary reached, 8 figures. Certainly it's going to be multiples of what Greg Berhalter was making. He was making about 2.2 million. So, again, we're talking about a lot of money, but the USSF is at a point where it's able to get creative in terms of how such a hire is funded. You hear about, what's done in college sports. In this instance, you've got sponsors able to kick in. You've got individuals able to kick in. I mean, that's essentially what Canada did in being able to hire Jesse Marsh. So, I think there are a lot of mechanisms that the USSF can rely on in terms of being able to pay, what a Mauricio Pochettino is worth. So, again, I don't think money is always an object, at a certain point. But again, it would not surprise me to see the salary go into the 8-figure range.
Yeah, JT Batson, I believe, mentioned that the money wasn't going to be an issue when it came to picking this coach. I'm very curious. You mentioned that Mark Ogden said that as soon as this weekend there could be an agreement, an announcement in place. There are, fixture windows, FIFA fixture windows right around the corner. Are we safe to assume that we can see Mauricio Pochettino as soon as September in those windows for those friendlies? Or is it a situation where we may see an interim coach and they take their time with integrating him into the team?
Yeah, I think the latter option is definitely on the table. We're only a few weeks away, from those September fixtures. And Pochettino is going to want to take some time to assemble his staff. And also get a lay of the land within the federation, how things work, who the players are, and those types of things. So it would not surprise me to see, the October window be the actual debut for Mauricio Pochettino. Me personally, I want to see him start tomorrow because I really do believe that time is of the essence. And, there's, give or take, there are like 9 windows that Pochettino is going to have at his disposal in order to mold this team into the image that he wants. And so that might sound like a lot of time, but in my opinion, it really isn't. And we're already, 2+ years into this cycle. So, I would like to see Pochettino start as soon as possible, but, obviously the powers that be at the USSF and Pochettino himself, they want to make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and everything is above board so that, when he can start, he can do that with no distractions on the contractual side, and he's ready to begin his work.
Well, Jeff kind of teased it in terms of what we can expect from the players now, and that is no more excuses, and just kind of focusing on what we should expect on the pitch. I suppose this is a question for both of you guys. Jeff, you and I have definitely covered the U.S. men's national team for a couple of years now, and one of the things that constantly, I suppose, we kept asking, especially under Greg Berhalter, was what is the true identity of this team? What is the true style of this team? And now, I covered Chelsea quite closely for the last year under Mauricio Pochetino, and that was the question, I kid you not, I was asked every single time. Now, look, the U.S. men's national team is definitely in a different situation from Chelsea. We know the shambles that Chelsea have been over the last couple of seasons, having new ownership come in, buying a whole lot of players that probably didn't fit. A lot of these problems that Chelsea have and still had as well were not Mauricio Pochettino's issue, but we still kept asking, what is Chelsea's identity under Mauricio Pochettino? And it was the hardest thing for anybody to answer. So for both you, Herc, I guess, Herc, we could start with you and then Jeff. How do you want to see the USA play under Mauricio Pochettino? What do you feel he's bringing that will make that change on the pitch this time?
Well, listen, Matt Crocker said they wanted a serial winner. How you define winning is a different category. It's a different thing. Certainly doesn't mean trophies, but it doesn't mean he's not a winner. And his teams, when they've won, they've done it in a very attractive play, and a very attractive brand of football. I don't think we're going to see that here, nor do I think you should go down that road. I think when you look at this team, and when you look at world football, international football, the game has changed. The two teams who have dominated the international game for the better part of a decade are France and Argentina. And we can go back to the tournaments they've played, the finals they've gone to, the finals they've won. They've been the two teams that have been the most dominant. And they both play a very pragmatic style of football. And they have world-class players. They've got a Kylian Mbappe. They've got a Lionel Messi. The U.S. doesn't have that pool of player. They have nowhere close to this type of player. You have to play to your strengths, and I think a pragmatic coach was probably, to my liking, where I would have gone. That is not Pochettino. He is of the Bielsa vein. They are romantics at heart in the way they play. But what I do love is the way they get to the players, how they can tap into the potential of the player and explode those virtues. So I'm hoping individually he makes players. Imagine a better Christian Pulisic. How scary that be? Imagine untapping Timothy Weah or a Giovanni Reina or a Weston McKennie, these type of players. I'm very excited to see that individually because he's proven it. He's got a track record of developing and working well with young players and empowering those players on the field. Empower them on the field. That's what I want to see. But when it comes to the style, I really don't know what to expect. This isn't exactly a great marriage when it comes to talking about styles.
Jeff, what do you think?
I mean, everyone talks about how Pochettino's from the Bielsa school, pressing, being aggressive, trying to win the ball in the opponent's half. We saw some of that, in the last few years. And I think that style would work for the U.S. because it is an athletic team. It is a team that will run you into the ground if you let them. And I think it's a style that can work. Now he does like to play the ball out of the back, and while that has worked against CONCACAF opposition, when the U.S. has gone up against the higher echelon teams in the world, Colombia, we saw what Uruguay really ground the U.S. into dust at the Copa America. And so, that gives me pause a little bit. But listen, Pochettino's a smart guy. I mean, I think he's going to see what he has, and I think he's going to tweak his philosophy to fit his players. Because let's face it, it's international football. He has to do that. He's not going to be able to call up the board and say, "Give me a better left back," or give me a better midfielder. I mean, the player pool is the player pool, and so he's going to have to make that work. But we've seen the U.S. have success pressing in the past. We've also seen other teams have success pressing them. So, I think that's the balance that Pochettino is going to have to manage and reconcile and see what kind of marriage, and what kind of fusion of styles will actually work for this U.S. men's national team.
Can we for a second just pause and acknowledge the real winner in this, not in this room, but just in the room, the peripheral room, Matt Crocker. This is a win-win situation for Matt Crocker either way. I mean, Pochettino comes in, does well. I delivered the guy who does well. I delivered a big name heading into the World Cup on home soil, a guy who's charismatic, a guy who's sought after in world football. And if it doesn't go his way, what do you want me to do? I brought in the best possible candidate, and it didn't go this way. But I brought this guy here. I landed this guy here. It's a massive win for U.S. soccer. It's a massive feather in the cap for Matt Crocker. I don't know the dollar amount. I don't think it matters. Honestly, I'm not saying give him the pearly gates. I'm not saying give him the keys to the kingdom. But this is such a massive haul, regardless of how it goes down on the field. Matt Crocker's a clear winner here.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a guy that, as I think I mentioned earlier, there were board members who had their doubts, who after the Berhalter experience, over the last 14 months or so, there was some grumbling about his decision. But I think Crocker said it himself, on the day that he made the decision to fire Greg Berhalter. He admitted that he was more educated now about the federation, about the various players, about how the federation works, and he's also more familiar with the player pool. So I think he took all of that into account. And listen, he got the green light from the higher ups to swing big, and that's what he's done. And he connected. And so now it's up to the players to really try to make this work, and Pochettino himself as well. I mean, they've got to work together to try to make this a World Cup to remember for the United States.
I want to bring up one quick thing, too. I suppose one quality about Mauricio Pochettino that sometimes is not really talked about as much, and even of the U.S. men's national team and Greg Berhalter. And Jeff, I think you will know it well because we heard it time and time again as we followed the USA in this Copa America. And that was just the culture of the squad and the players and how, yes, they really get along. And yes, it is a brotherhood. And look, that sounds cheesy, I suppose, sometimes because they say, look, this harmony and brotherhood doesn't win you trophies. But it does count for something. And that was a culture that, Greg Berhalter really helped to build at the U.S. men's national team. Now, I know quite a bunch of Chelsea players from covering them and, spoke to some of them as recently as last week. And that's something that now with Enzo Maresca coming in, of course, he still has to, build his own culture and take some time. But they said that Poch's man management and that culture that he brought at Chelsea was something that they missed sorely from everyone from the pitch to the backroom staff. It is something that he has. We talked about it on Football W with Ali Krieger about the U.S. women's national team and how they have said that one of their strongest strengths, again, is how they are all in harmony. And Emma Hayes has brought that to another level. It's this kind of open style of management where you feel like you can have open conversations with the managers. And it's not necessarily that Marcelo Bielsa way of ruling with an iron fist or with that fear factor. But of course, that does command respect and yields results. But I guess, Herc, let me start with you on this one. When you do hear that man management, and of course, as a former player, do you feel like that's a strength that the U.S. can capitalize on with Pochettino coming in? Or did you want to see someone, probably as Tyler Adams hinted, to kind of, put a shock to that or a little bit of a stop to that so that they are a bit more ruthless?
Yeah, I think I would love more pride from the players in being ruthless upon themselves, not having to be told what to do. These are things that the most basic of U.S. men's national teams that we can go back in the history of the U.S. men's national team have done. Establish a culture, the fight, the spirit, the willingness to represent with pride your country. These are standard things for any player who puts on that jersey. You don't need Mauricio Pochettino to establish that culture. While it's good, I just don't know how it's going to translate for him in a situation that he's never dealt with. He is a club coach becoming an international manager. When you have the duties of the day-to-day at the club level, you have the day-to-day. You won't have that here, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes by. But certainly you just brought in a coach, or you will bring in a coach who commands respect. And sometimes these players, with Greg Berhalter, they may have said they respected him, but they respected him in that friend type of way, not in the authoritarian type of way, not in the I work for this guy type of way. And sometimes that trust, that responsibility was lost upon them. And this is why we see things like Dest in Trinidad and Tobago. This is why we see Timothy Weah at Copa America getting a red card. This is why we've seen some of the disciplinary issues that have come about with this U.S. men's national team. So I'm hoping, while it doesn't have to be an iron fist, that respect is there. And certainly with a coach like Pochettino coming into the locker room, they all know who he is, and that'll be there.
Jeff,
yeah,
I mean,
I think it's a situation where I think that natural tension within a national team where players are competing for places, I think that began to wane a little bit. You saw Serginho Dest. I mean, he was called in, the very next tournament after getting that ridiculous red card against Trinidad and Tobago. And it felt a little bit too comfortable. And so I don't think someone has to come in with an iron fist. I think the fact that it's a different manager, a different voice, a different approach, that by itself is going to kind of ratchet up that tension within the team, that competitive tension, a healthy tension. And so, I think it's a situation where, hey, nothing is going to be given. Everyone starts with a clean slate. And, just because you started for Greg Berhalter doesn't mean you're going to start, for Mauricio Pochettino. So I think that competitiveness, that drive, that fight, for places, I think that is going to create a little bit better atmosphere just in terms of players holding themselves accountable. I mean, there was the Players' Council, and we'll see if, how Pochettino decides to manage that. But, I think it's a situation that because you have a new manager coming in and there's not much time. I mean, guys are going to have to put their stamp on things, and they're going to have to get Pochettino to notice them very, very quickly. So, I don't think there's going to be any time for them to kind of ease into it. And I just think the fact that it's a different voice is going to change things for the better, and again, create a better atmosphere with a little bit more accountability.
Well, Jeff, I hope you have no plans for the next week, because I'm pretty sure you're going to be a very busy man for the next couple of days until this is officially confirmed. But Jeff Carlisle, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Anytime.